So thank you everybody for joining. We'll start our webinar today. Land acknowledgements. We're thankful to be able to join you from the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat. On the agenda today, we have our guest speakers today are Lynn and Tom from the City of Burlington. We'll have a detailed presentation of EV charging policy from the town of Aurora, scheduled at a later date. The City of Burlington has not yet completed the corporate policy for EV chargers. However, they've had a few discussions related to the operations and planning. And today, Lynn and Tom will outline some of the issues that they have been dealing with.
So thank you for having us here to speak today, Juliet. So I am Lynn Robichaud. I'm the Manager of Environmental Sustainability for the city. And I'm here with our Energy Coordinator Extraordinaire, Tom Pedlar. And as Juliet mentioned, we do not have a corporate policy for electric vehicle charging as of yet, but we do have a lot of experience installing and operating chargers for not only our corporate fleet, but also the public. So today, I'll give an overview of sort of our policy direction in this area. Tom will give you an update on the number of chargers we have and are in the works. Tom will also speak to our challenges, and then we'll both sort of provide an overview of what we see the opportunities in this area. Next slide, please, Tom. So we have two climate-related plans that sort of drive this work. One is the Corporate Energy and Emissions Management Plan that Council approved in 2019. And that plan has a target for our city operations to be net carbon neutral by 2040. Greening our fleet is a sort of a key area, obviously, to help us meet that net carbon neutral target. And our fleet manager will be working on updating the Green Fleet strategy this year. We also have a community-based climate action plan focused on mitigation as well. And we have a council-approved target for the community to be net carbon neutral by 2050. Electric mobility is another key program area of that plan to help us meet that target, recognizing that transportation is a big part of our carbon footprint in Burlington. So notwithstanding, we see that we don't have a corporate policy or a policy altogether on overseeing EV charging. There's a lot of sort of interconnectedness between these two plans on electric mobility. So on that, I'll turn it over to Tom to give an update on where we are with EV charging in the city.
Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, so currently we have a fairly extensive charging network in and around Burlington. We have a good mix of public and corporate chargers. So currently we have 26 charging stations and a total of 48 charging ports. So the majority of these are in our downtown core right now. And then a number of those are within our staff parking lots downtown and around City Hall. We also have a few at some of our larger corporate facilities, our fire headquarters and our roads, parks and forestry operations center and our animal shelter. And we have some additional stations in progress at one of our downtown parking lots, one of our arenas, and also a fast charger that's in the works for one of our downtown parking lots. So we also just received word that we're going to be getting some TAF funding for EV chargers that we're going to put in for in the rest of the year. That'll take us up to a total of 39 chargers and 74 charging ports by the end of the year. Okay. So with such a large portfolio of EV chargers, we're starting to identify some operational challenges now that a lot of these chargers have been in for a few years. We put our first charger in 2015, so they're starting to get 6-7 years old, some of the older ones. And I think the biggest overall issue that a lot of our issues with our charging network stem from is that we really have a decentralized operation, meaning that a number of different departments have put in these chargers. You know, some different brands have been put in. Most of our chargers are in the ChargePoint network, and we can't necessarily connect all of the ones that have been installed to our ChargePoint network, which makes, you know, data collection difficult. The same can be said for monitoring or repairs after they are installed. Since it's not really part of any one group's duties, the stations are often forgot about. So the City of Burlington is set up a little bit differently than other municipalities. We don't have one department that looks after maintenance and operations for all of our buildings. That falls on what we call the client departments, or the end user departments, to take care of their own facilities, with the group that Lynn and I are part of, looking after sort of the construction and major projects. We've also had some issues with customer service. If anyone's used the ChargePoint network, you'll know that when you use a charger, you can leave a comment at the charging location. So as we've experienced breakdowns that are going unnoticed, because, you know, not one person is monitoring all of these stations, we've started to receive some rather harsh feedback on some of our stations that were out of order for a while. So that's one thing that we've definitely identified as something that we can improve upon. And we've also recently had some discussions about expanding some of our charging network to include more accessible charging stations, or sorry, accessible parking spaces that are served by charging stations. So we currently have, I believe, one at one of our downtown kind of arenas that's served by an EV charger, and then we're looking to incorporate a few more in the facilities that we're going to be installing chargers at through the TAF funding program later this year. And I'll pass it back to Lynn to speak to some of the opportunities with the kind of overall policy and framework and things.
Thank you, Tom. So yeah, so first top on our list is developing the corporate policy, and we've certainly taken a look at what Aurora has done, and so we look forward to another webinar where Aurora can join us. But we need that policy to sort of help guide us, and where are we going to prioritize future charging stations? Do the charging stations for corporate fleet outweigh ones for the public? What level should we be focusing on? Right now, the majority of our charging stations are level 2, with one level 3 in the works. And we are, I think, getting more interest in level 3 charging stations, particularly for those in the community that live in higher density apartment buildings, condo buildings, that, especially the older buildings that don't have EV charging access. So these people can't charge at home. So they're looking for more access to our chargers, so that they have a sort of a reasonable access to charging their vehicles. We need to figure out the responsibility for all these charging stations. Ideally, it should be more centralized than what we have right now. So we are in discussions with a couple of other departments, our transportation services and our fleet manager in roads, parks, and forestry, to chat about some of these responsibilities. Our council is very supportive of EV charging, and so we need to make sure that we're monitoring and reporting out to council on their usage, particularly since we're not charging for EV charging right now, time at the chargers. And council strongly supported this when we reported to them about this issue last year. So, we'll have to figure out what the future is on that with the corporate policy. So a lot of things to think about. We know we also need to engage our staff that drive city vehicles on how to use the EV chargers, and that they shouldn't be blocking chargers. We've noticed, I guess there have been vehicles sort of parked there for hours, if not days, or the vehicles, especially the plug-in hybrids, they're not always being charged, so they're running on gas instead of using the electric battery, which is unfortunate. So a little bit of work to be done there, and improved community engagement. I don't think we've done a great job of engaging to our community, that we have this opportunity for them to charge their vehicles at city chargers, and that if people who are interested in EVs and may not have that ability to charge at their home location, that there are publicly available charging stations. So we need to work with our communication staff to sort of maybe develop some sort of a program to raise awareness of the work we're doing. And then, as Tom mentioned, we're very pleased to get the TAF funding to expand some of our charging stations. And we were also very lucky to get and retain our funding in the early days from the province before cap and trade was canceled. And they didn't claw back our funding because we were far enough along in getting EV chargers installed. So that really helped us get a foot in a door. But external funding is still going to, I think, be very important to us as we continue to implement EV charging stations. So we will continue to monitor those opportunities in the future. Over to you, Tom.
Okay. So yeah, speaking to some of the opportunities as far as operation goes. Our staff, like Lynn said, is currently working to centralize our operations so that we can, have one team that's installing and maintaining all of the city's charging infrastructure. Lynn and I's team has started to pick up some of these tasks. We've added kind of a section into our annual report to council on the corporate energy and emissions management plan that speaks to the progress of our EV charging infrastructure. So we're including, and only on the chargers that we can connect with, which is most of our chargers. But we're including, utilization rates, recent installations, some of our plans for expansion of the network, as well as updates on funding opportunities. We've also kind of been trying to dig into the ChargePoint backend system to start setting up, alarms and reporting to get a better handle on when our chargers go down, or like Lynn was saying, some of our corporate fleet is maybe not using our current charging infrastructure to the best of their ability, and we could probably have some efficiencies on moving our vehicles through those chargers. So we're just kind of getting our hands into that monitoring system and seeing how it can help us in some of these challenges. We also have a person on our team who looks after corporate contracts. So he is going to start taking over the renewal of all the cloud plan contracts. So all of the contracts that we have with ChargePoint to maintain communication with the chargers and be able to troubleshoot them. So we're going to start to take over all of that, because all of these chargers have gone in at different dates. So, all of their renewal dates have all been different. We have had a couple drop off our system in the past because we missed a cloud plan renewal. So we're looking at sorting all those out and getting them lined up so they're not all over the place. We're also looking at the possibility of, our EV charging infrastructure network is growing at a rapid pace. So we're looking at maybe combining it with, some of the other monitoring work that we do to maybe try and go after an FTE position to look after, we're not really quite sure yet, but it's in early days, but we might, lump it together with, monitoring of solar sub-metering or building automation, just to have someone kind of keeping track of all these kind of newer systems that are part of the corporate energy and emissions management plan. And we also need to think about, as we go down the road, like Lynn said, our council is very supportive of keeping these stations free, but we understand that that's not going to last forever, and eventually that we're probably going to have to at least try and break even on some of the operational costs. So we need to start thinking about how we're going to manage that part of it as well. So we're keeping that in mind as we move down the road and expand our system. So I think that's pretty much all we had, but we'll be happy to answer whatever questions anyone has.